to fully execute my vision for Immortal, I'm going to need billions of dollars. And private equity is a way to harness, it's like a technology, if you will. So I'm not intrinsically interested in private equity or not. It's something to do to get to where I really want to be. I made a decision that I was going to live a good life, irregardless of how I was doing professionally or financially.
What's a good life?
Because my father's always told me, it's kind of interesting. He says, don't look for the teacher. It's really the teachers who are looking for students. Because they have so much they want to give, but they want to give it to someone who's ready to receive it.
Fast forward Immortal for me. To say that you have a dream today.
Yes.
Where's Immortal going to be?
Immortal I see as the iterator of a new global mythology and defining a new era of popular culture that's grounded in wisdom, understanding of who we are as humans.
Based on what?
Based on, I think, this timeless message of Wuxia to awaken the heroes in every one of us.
I'm MK, I'm your host.
I'm Payhuan Shiao, I'm the founder, CEO of Immortal Studios. Let's rock, man.
Let's talk about warriors.
Let's talk about warriors.
Grandfather?
Look, I come from a generation of warriors. My grandfather was one of the leading generals of Chiang Kai-shek during the Second World War. So he's always like this big shadow that, he was the one who lifted that generation of Shaos to greatness. He was a defender of his people, and he was a fierce warrior. He's known as the war god. He was compared to as the war god for that region. So
what's a warrior? What's a warrior?
Well, warrior first, in my understanding, is first person who wages against his or her own lower nature and is victorious, and then is able to bring that strength in magnified ways in service of humanity. That's my definition of a warrior.
So a warrior is always victorious?
No, I mean, ultimately against your own lower nature, more often than not. I think in the metaphysical sense, I identify that with more because I think we are looking for a more peaceful way of warring, if you will. I don't think the warlike metaphor always works, but I think there's a version of warriorhood that ultimately is incredibly peaceful and harmonious, but it doesn't mean it's easy or limp, if you will. I think it's a very active, engaged process.
How'd you learn about your grandfather?
Through books, through citations. I was kind of raised in his shadow. I just remember like his old medals. I never met my grandfather, by the way, because he passed before I was born.
Okay.
Letters and calligraphy. Like I'm still surrounded in his legacy. Even in my home today, I have just like tons of calligraphies that he collected that was given to him from the masters, from president, from war citations. So I got to know him and through my father's stories of who his father was. And then I was able to experience him when I started to travel in China. I found his names on museums in the Chinese Military Museum. And then I was able to visit his ancestral home. That actually became the backdrop of a story that I created. So there's a museum in his hometown, which I just visited about 3 years ago and saw his name written all over the town centers. And, his old home that he built for his parents is now like is the #1 museum of his hometown, which has created the most phenomenal Chinese warriors throughout history. So
Is your father a warrior too?
My father is a legendary warrior, whereas his father is
more
the
than
real.
Your granddad?
They're different because my grandfather is really the man of the sword. He was a real warrior. He led his troops into battle. That's what he did, and he did it incredibly well. And that's why he became a general from being a field soldier. My own father is a literary warrior, so his weapon of choice is the pen. And he chose the literary genre of the martial hero genre known as Wuxia. Wuxia, literally the martial hero genre. So he held the space of the archetypal warrior. And his world was culture, art, drama, language, and characters. So they're kind of like polar opposites. They're different sides of the same coin.
So do you have to be a warrior?
I don't think you have to be anything.
No, you. Do you have to be a warrior if your grandfather and your father?
Well, first of all, it just flows in my blood. It's not whether I want to be. It's just...
Do you want to be?
Absolutely. In my adult years, I've chosen to be one, but was I aware of the lineage that I was born into? Not really. Did I really own it all my life? No. And it's still something that I'm learning to embody more and more every day.
Is it a burden?
It can be. First of all, like, how do you top that?
Correct.
I never tried to top it, but my grandfather was who he is, and he was a moment in time, and my father is who he is. Eventually, my father became one of the top creators of this legendary genre, and became literally one of the top creators in this most popular form of storytelling and entertainment. So he's now in the Chinese Writers Museum, whereas my grandfather is in the Military Museum. And I'm not even trying to top them, but the truth be told, I am also
burdened.
I am their air holder. They've given me this wonderful legacy, this lineage, and so I don't feel the pressure to perform, but I feel called to do what I can.
When do you feel, is there a point where you say, okay, I've continued this legacy? Is there something that you want to do that you say, okay, my grandfather did this, my father did this, this is what I'm going to do? Has that ever happened? Like, is there a point in time?
I don't think I've tried to do it intentionally, because then I think that would be forcing it. But I think organically it's happening. And something I've also done is not, because we're talking about a patriarchal lineage. And in my own work, I've really spent a lot of time with my mother and getting to know the matriarchal side of it. So let it be said, I'm also my mother and my grandmother's offspring. And my mother has really taught me so much, and she comes from this amazing lineage also of Manchurian and Mongolian warriors and royalty. So there's like this confluence of really deeply inspiring ideas that's kind of larger than life. The things that they stand for, the ideals they stand for humanity, for virtue, for morality, for how to hold oneself, is just extraordinary. So I see it now as a true blessing. It really is something that I'm blown away by, and something I'm excavating. And it doesn't cause me to be anything outwardly. It's just something I'm working on, just feeling in my body, if that makes sense. And it's something that's happening with more regularity. I feel them flowing through me.
Elaborate on that last point.
Because these are a lot of ideas, right? And how ideas become translated into the real world, I think it's a process called embodiment that we're talking a lot about. And something that has been happening in my life organically has been this embodied feeling. So when I talk about these ideas, that feels kind of hocus pocusy, but I'm telling you, I feel it in my body. Like, I feel their strength. I feel their power. I feel their virtue. I feel their calling, and I feel their courage.
Did you learn that by yourself, or someone taught you?
I think it's a series of things. I think I've become what I would say a cultivator actively about 20 something years ago.
Did you decide to be a cultivator?
I decided to be a cultivator.
How come?
There was an awakening process, where I really started to ask very deep questions about what is the meaning of my life? What am I here to do? What is my ultimate mission? What is my ultimate joy? So it's really a series of those questions.
Who were you asking yourself?
I was asking myself, and I was also asking that of the universe.
Was it dark?
It was incredibly dark. I think it's a dark night of the soul that leads one to ask these questions, and it usually comes from an unhappiness and a lack of fulfillment, and that was certainly true for me.
How long was the unhappiness for?
Oh gosh, for so long.
Because you couldn't find any purpose?
No, I was externally living my purpose, but internally I wasn't really living it. So I was showing up as though I was doing it and checking some of those external boxes, but deep down inside I wasn't really connected to the big whys, and so I was pretending like I was, and ultimately that's not very fulfilling.
When did martial arts come into the conversation?
Well, martial arts has always been part of my own lineage, just because on a literary basis, I started to read about these legendary masters. Mm-hmm. And by the way, not this kind of dojo kind of martial arts we know it today, but I think in a more esoteric, legendary, metaphysical sense. So that's been part of my own realm.
Okay.
But it wasn't until after this awakening experience that I began to develop a whole new set of lens for what the martial arts has always been about. It's always been about a very deep internal transformation, not just the external form. So when I really understood martial arts as a very active way of cultivating oneself, I started to practice. And it started from, simple practices. I started with Wing Chun practice, which is now popularized because Bruce Lee made it incredibly popular. And I think the whole thing really changed when I became a meditator.
When was that?
I became a regular meditator, I would say 23, 24 years ago.
So it's around the same time?
Around the same time when it all came together, when I started to, I actually spent about 5 years living as the character in Kung Fu, basically walking the world, walking the earth. That's literally what I did, from teaching to teaching, master to master. And it was during this time that all of this work started to find me. Because my father's always told me, it's kind of interesting. He says, don't look for the teacher. It's really the teachers who are looking for students. Because they have so much they want to give, but they want to give it to someone who's ready to receive it. The whole martial arts conversation changed for me, when under very unique circumstances, I encountered the abbot of the Shaolin Temple. And the abbot, the Shaolin Temple, I don't know if you know this, but most practitioners of Kung Fu would think of this as their Mecca. Shaolin is the birthplace of Zen Buddhism, and it's also the birthplace of the Kung Fu myth, or the mythology of Kung Fu as we know it today. So all Kung Fu.
What's the real Kung Fu myth?
The real this is
the real
this
one.
Well, I've
read so much about
it. There was an Indian monk named Bodhidharma who from India took a very deep yogic understanding and concentration and a form of meditation and stillness. And that was his lineage. He took it over he crossed the barrier to China. This is at a time when Buddhism was making its way into China. So he found a Shaolin Temple, and he connected with the monks there, and out spawned this combination of the physical movements of combat and practice and nature with this inner stillness and deep meditative practice. And when these two things hit together, it's created this supernatural phenomenon that we now know, that's known as Kung Fu. But from a quantum physics point of view, you can see how this deep meditation ultimately allows you to bend reality and suspend reality as you know it, because as you become really, really one with the source of everything, supernatural, amazing things happen. So this was kind of like the birthplace of original Kung Fu, this myth of Kung Fu as a transcendent practice, as something that moves us beyond our physical limitations, what we think is possible. So the Shaolin has kind of popularized this in a very iconic way. So and they were able to distill many of these practices. So there's different styles of Kung Fu, different forms of Kung Fu, different techniques. So it became this repository of the knowledge of Kung Fu. So most practitioners of Kung Fu would consider Shaolin to be the Mecca. So the whole thing opened up for me when I met the Shaolin abbot, and then I connected with the head warrior monks of this order, and they invited me in as one of them. So when I was given...
Why did they invite you in?
I think they saw someone with because I've been working with monastics, and I've been, there was just a closeness. I can't explain it. When you get into the room, what causes great energy, like we got in the room and we just felt like we were peers in a way, because I really wasn't looking for a master, and they saw someone who was also with a shaved head, a Chinese person they identified with, who was also operating in the Western mainstream.
Were you much younger than them in the room?
No, the abbot is just a few years older than me. So we were approximately the same age.
Were you scared?
No.
You had no fear?
Scared. No. I felt like, look, I mean, I didn't have any fears about them, but I also knew that there was a message of Shaolin that needed to get out, and I was very passionate about it, and I understood it. And
so you were comfortable being with them in the same room?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, very, very much so.
Are you an expert at martial arts today?
I'm not an expert. It's something that I actually think a lot about. I think we have way too many masters these days.
Yeah, of course.
You know, I think people get a little bit of knowledge and they just get ahead of themselves. You know, it's one of the things, like I would say this and I'm not really being humble. I'm being factual that I am not a master because I know masters and I know what they can do and I know the space that they hold. So I know more about this practice than most people, but it doesn't make me an expert. And it doesn't make me a master. But am I a student? Yes, I am.
You're still a student.
I'm still a student.
Day to day, are you more of a warrior or are you more of an expert in martial arts?
But the martial arts thing is like a practice. So it's I'm just me. I don't have a whole lot of ideas about who I am and who I'm not. But as an entrepreneur, as a creator, as a father, as a friend, I mean, I take on many different roles. But I do take this unique perspective.
Do you teach?
I don't teach
At all?
No, not at all.
So if someone came to you and wanted to learn about how to be a warrior or about martial arts, would you?
No, it's not what I do.
Reason being, you wouldn't teach. Why?
I
Because you have all that knowledge.
I think there are people who are really good at teaching, and I see them, and they're really great. My daughter, for instance, just would refuse. Like she says, "No, Baba, you don't have the patience for it." I'm like, okay, well, maybe. I mean, I have other strengths, so I'm a doer.
Okay.
I'm very good at doing. I'm very good at just charging ahead. I think it's my grandfather in me, but you know, sometimes, but I don't have that, hey, I'm going to break it down into 4 steps for you. And then like, that's just not something I'm very, I don't want to say I'm good at. It's not something I'm drawn to do because there's plenty to do.
Tell me about your relationship with Hollywood.
Sure.
When did you decide to have a relationship with Hollywood?
It's kind of an interesting thing because, you know, I'm an immigrant. I was born in Taiwan. And I came through LA via South Africa. And I landed in Hollywood as a 10-year-old. So my family actually moved. My dad, being the artist he just sent his brother a bunch of money.
Wait, you moved to LA through South Africa?
Through South Africa. We were contemplating a life as living in Swaziland in Africa. So I was a Chinese kid dressed as Harry Potter going to British prep schools in South Africa. So I landed in Hollywood as a 10-year-old. So I consider myself actually from Hollywood because those were formative years. When you go from 10 to 16 in Hollywood, like I identify with not just Hollywood, the industry. I know every inch of Hollywood 98828. Like I tore up every inch of those crosswalks and streets with my skateboard, with my bike. I just really know Hollywood incredibly well.
When did you fall in love with it?
I think from day one. There was
Really?
just like this grandiosity, like walking Hollywood Boulevard, looking at the signs. You know, there was a statue of Rudolph Valentino in the park that I went to. I studied all the legendary careers of the moguls that ran Hollywood. Like I actually studied their lives, and so I'm a product of Hollywood.
Okay.
In that classic sense, and also in a physical sense.
So, how long was that period, like in Hollywood?
6 years. 6 years.
6 years.
6 years.
Then you left.
Well, I got into so much trouble. My
In
parents.
Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very turbulent time, and my parents now they're becoming more aware of how America really works, and they decided this is not the place to raise a family.
So you got in trouble with your parents. Or you got in trouble, period.
I
Because
got
you seem like a very disciplined person.
That was a different time. That was a different time and place. I became a suburbanite, so they moved into the suburbs, which was deeply traumatic for me.
Really?
Just imagine changing schools when you're a junior in high school and going from a place where the cool thing to do was listen to music or drama and the arts into kind of a more Americana environment where people actually went to football games and, you know, it was a cool thing to be a cheerleader, where like that was kind of totally not in my vernacular.
Was that the beginning of the darkness period for you?
The darkness was already happening. Look, I had a very unhappy childhood. I mean, I talked about my family in glowing terms because I truly love them, but they're also descendants of war. There's things that there's just deep trauma that flowed in our family. And my parents didn't grow up with very loving attention from their parents. So I felt very ignored and isolated and unseen, unsupported to face all of these challenges on my own.
Are you trying to change that with your kids?
Absolutely.
So you're very cognizant of it.
I'm very cognizant of it. Or I try to be as much as I can. Down to like back to school shopping, which was like horrific for me. My parents didn't understand that's one of the things you do as an American teenager was you do back to school shopping. So imagine trying to do that every year, like when everybody's like looking amazing and cool, and you go with like this beat up shit. You're that's like the worst feeling. So I had to do a lot of that.
What was your relationship like with school?
I hated it. I checked out.
The whole thing?
I checked out. I mean,
when did you check out?
I checked out at a very young age. But it's not that I don't know what happened, but there's almost like a spell that was cast on me. In fact, some of my friends thought I was dyslexic because whenever a book opens, I fall asleep.
Okay.
So no, like the scholarly way really wasn't the way for me. I barely graduated high school. I missed like 40 days my senior year. I was really just not interested.
How were your parents doing that?
They didn't know.
Oh.
They didn't know. I mean, again, like my parents didn't know how to be parents as we know it today. Like my dad was raised by his extended network of nannies and military officers from an estranged mother and a father who's constantly off at war, literally. And my mom also came from an environment where people's feelings and daily lives were not tended to. But that was like their reality. And I think that was kind of the backdrop of me. And in hindsight, as I kind of do this kind of work, I've had to really go back there and repair, really reach out to that part of me that really suffered from that kind of neglect.
When did you understand business, or when did you get into business? Like at what age? Like
I was actually trained to be a politician. That was my first calling. So I was on this trajectory where I was ready to run for office here in California. So my first career out of college, I studied political science. I eventually figured out a way to graduate when I knew that there was no life for me if I didn't, check that box. So I figured out a way and eventually got into politics and found out I was really good at it. So I was getting ready for a career.
What does that mean? What's good at politics means?
Engaging with the public. I think what's really good in politics is really a sense of compassion and commitment to the public good. And that's something that intrinsically propelled me. So I think, that's a great motivation to have when you're going into public service. And
were you doing that and still thinking of yourself as a warrior?
The warrior metaphor didn't come until much later.
Much later?
Yeah.
So you were just a civilian at the time? Thinking of yourself as a civilian, just a normal person?
I think I was already engaged in chivalrous practices because, what really sustained me through all of those years were the martial arts novels. Reading these novels of legendary heroes that my father wrote and other people wrote, and somehow their deeds and their trajectories really inspired me. So even as a kid, I remember I would draw these martial heroes and the things that they would do, and that kind of. I was pretty good. I mean, I didn't really develop my art beyond that, but I think I can draw reasonably well.
Till today?
If I picked it up and just drew something, I would be okay. But obviously, I now work with many, many different, extraordinary artists. I wouldn't put a candle to them. But yeah, I think there was some kind of native skill there.
So you graduate college and do you work in politics?
I worked in politics.
For how long?
For 6 years.
You quit?
I quit. I was ready to run for office. So I'd risen pretty quickly in politics, yes.
Why'd you quit?
To go into storytelling. I had a big awakening. So first I had...
Is this your first awakening?
No, this is kind of more, this wasn't an existential awakening, it was more of an awakening in how the world actually works. So
Were you happy in politics?
In the beginning, I was very happy
Why?
because I had a chance to serve. The idea that,
So you like to serve people,
absolutely,
but
absolutely.
you like to be in control while you're serving people.
I don't know if it's control. I like to be empowered, or I am empowered. I feel empowered.
Or you are the power.
If you're empowered, you are the power.
Yeah.
Or you are the power, maybe with a lowercase p.
Yeah, so we go back to, we're circling around the warrior. So you quit one day. So how did you quit? First off, how did you actually
No, I
quit?
remember it happening. It was during a major presidential election, and the party that I happened to be affiliated with lost.
Okay.
And I looked around that room, and I thought long and hard about the future. I was actually getting ready to run for the state house myself, and I just said, you know what? I'm ready to leave this because I don't think this is the kind of impact I want to have. Ultimately, I began to see that politics, as it comes to, because ultimately politics is there's several things that go with it. One is messaging. The other is really policy change or changing laws and behaviors.
Sure.
And that was, to me, was like the lesser form of modifying behavior.
So if you didn't lose, would you not have quit?
No, I would have quit anyways. My party
Regardless.
lost. I didn't lose. I think
So if your party had won, you'd still quit?
I would have quit anyways. But it made it very convenient for me. I first of all, I was in my 20s and I was wearing suits every day.
That sucks.
Yeah. And what opened onto me was a world of creativity. And I really started to see that I wanted to be part of being able to change people and uplift people's minds, hearts, and spirits. And that really wasn't possible in the political realm. And that,
It still isn't.
and I think, the way I see it now is like political leadership is almost taking 49% to 51%. And I think about the example that Barack Obama set, even though I think in his heart of hearts, he always believed people were intrinsically equal. But it took his VP, that back then, Joe Biden, saying something about supporting LGBTQ issues that got this semi-progressive leader, president, to say, yes, I'm with it too. So it was like going from 49 to 51%, and that's called leadership. Think about JFK with civil rights. Well, I want to be with Martin Luther King on civil rights. I don't want to be with JFK. And that's the difference between, I think, the power of culture and spirit and ideas versus its implementation in the real world.
So when you quit, what was that day like to you?
It was empowering. It was empowering. And
So you felt free.
I felt absolutely free.
What was the next day like?
I just went straight to work.
How did you quit? Did you walk in?
I turned down a political appointment. I just literally quit the job, and people were like,
So you just walked in and said, I quit? Or
it'd been happening for some time. But look, I'm still involved. I have a whole lived life. I was a Senate fellow where the institution basically trained me to be a future political leader, and all my fellows are now. I had a friend who almost became governor of California. I've now worked closely with multiple California governors. My friends are running the state, and many of them in very prominent positions in the Congress. So it's something that I still care about, but it's not something that I care to put my personal attention into, because I still believe in the power of culture and images and storytelling.
So what did you do after that?
I wanted to really explore my own Chinese ancestry, even though I've been born in Taiwan and never been to China.
Okay.
And I wanted to engage in a different way. So I knew that I'd risen to some. I didn't also want to start over in Hollywood by being somebody's assistant or what have you. At the time,
So you decided to go back to Hollywood?
I decided to go into Hollywood. At the time, I was running several committees in the California state legislature. I was the chief staff person on the Senate Committee on the Entertainment Industry. So I was literally setting up policies for the entertainment industry. I put a few things together, and I received President Clinton and his Secretary of Commerce at the time to start an initiative to bring Hollywood and China together. So and I had the backing of she was senator then, and she's senator now, Senator Dianne Feinstein. She supported me, and I was able to mobilize that support into getting the Chinese counterparts to join us. So I ended up chairing the first ever collaborative planetary meeting between industry, creatives, and government in
So it's like you never left.
U.S. China, in the first ever U.S. China collaboration conference.
So it's like you never left. So you went back to Hollywood.
I went back to Hollywood, and I took that whole movement to China, and I basically positioned myself as the kind of as a bridge builder between these industries, because I wanted to be involved in storytelling that would be global, and also, frankly, included people who look like me, because up until now, I kind of grew up as a minority person where there wasn't a whole lot of understanding. I think historically, Asians and Chinese people in particular have been treated very poorly in this country.
Were you happy?
Was I happy doing the work I was doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when I think back, I'm really proud of me. I mean, I was
At that time,
20s.
were you happy doing it?
I loved it. And I also made a promise when I quit politics that I was going to be my own boss.
What does that mean? What is to you? What is that being?
To me, is living and dying by the decisions that I made. And I also didn't want
Your own
limitations. I didn't want limitations on my potential, my earning potential, my impact potential, my creative potential.
Speaking of earnings, what's your relationship with money?
It's a beautiful relationship now.
In terms of? When did you realize?
Well, I mean, I think money has been ever present. You're really asking great questions, because it's really, really deep work. I would say I was programmed with some really flawed notions of money, because what I received from my parents, and in kind of in a patriarchal household, I think I received two big lessons about money from my father.
Okay.
One is that I'm here to do great things and that there's infinite potential, and two is that there's not enough money to go around. Because in his life, he saw the entire his family fall from one of the ruling families into, leaving it all behind because of the Chinese Civil War, and then, eventual decline on losses. Eventually, so there was a lot of things that he had to deal with. So those were I don't think those were what he wanted to impart to me, but those were the real lessons I took. So it really, and then moving from an environment where I really relied on my salary to succeed, and now being an entrepreneur, I had to really address those head on, and it's been a journey of a lifetime, just getting my relationship with money right.
Yeah.
And so I've had peaks and valleys. I've had moments where, it's just flowing and I'm swimming in it. And then times when you hit a valley and then there's nothing, I'm underwater. So those kind of peaks and valleys really ultimately got me to do a lot of important money work.
You like to serve. You like to serve people. So there's a very positive relationship between that and money. That's why I ask. And then you throw in the mix business and entrepreneurship. Then I've got a very complicated conversation. So today, if I were to ask you today versus 10 years ago or 15 years ago, your relationship with money, has it changed?
Oh, it's changed very substantially.
In what way?
I've come to really respect it a lot more. Because of not having it or really struggling with it. Because as an entrepreneur, money is really, in many ways, the lifeblood. They say that in politics too. Money is the lifeblood of politics. And as an entrepreneur who's always championing something that I want to build, which is expensive, and you have to acquire people, and oftentimes before it becomes successful. So it became one of the more prevalent conversations that I've had to really struggle with and against as a founder, as an entrepreneur, as a CEO. So it's been really, really deep work, and I'm still in the middle of that, but I'm happy to be on the other side of it.
Did you ever, when did you feel secure about money? When you're like, okay, I'm good. I can do what I want now. I can say fuck you to anything, or
I wouldn't say fuck you to money. Look, I made
not
it
to money, but just say anything to feel free. When did you feel secure and free about money?
I would say really starting. I would say about 3 years ago when I made it.
So that's recent.
Yeah, it's pretty recent. It's been a struggle.
Did you wake up knowing it?
No, I think it was a slow process. It was a slow process ultimately when I realized that, hey, it's really not even about the money. It's the belief systems that lies underneath it. So there was a lot of scarce thinking in my mind, even though I wouldn't call it that. And there was also I made a decision that I was going to live a good life, irregardless of how I was doing professionally or financially.
What's a good life to you?
A good life is one that's filled with meaning, purpose, health, and harmony. And for me, as an adventurous person, as a fun person, I think it's very fun.
So you need money.
I think you need a level of money, but as somebody who's also committed to the path of creation and entrepreneurialism, there's always going to be peaks and valleys, and that's intrinsic to the job. That's intrinsic to the path I've taken. So if I only feel good when I'm up on top, or I'm doing well professionally and financially, then I'm going to have a very difficult life.
Are you doing well now?
Oh yeah, I feel like
on both. Financially.
Financially, it's an interesting moment, I would say, because my company Immortal Studios is scaling very quickly. So with it comes a lot of day-to-day challenges.
Before we get to studios,
yes.
Let's go back. Let's go back in time. Okay. How did you get into private equity?
Well, first, my exposure to the private equity world when I received an investment from a private equity fund in one of my previous companies.
Okay.
So it was like, okay, and the lead partner of that private equity fund, who still remains a good friend and an investor shareholder in all my ventures since then, kind of taught me private equity. I was like, well, that's really cool, because I think part of it is I began to appreciate the importance of money in instigating good things and helping good things scale. So invariably, a lot of things in business becomes about capital or availability of capital.
But you come from so I go from warrior background to creative to business and money, and it's just like it's confusing to me how someone can be all that. It's just.
I'm not trying to be. I mean, that's those. I don't know how they happened, but they did, and so I got into private equity. Wasn't because I wanted to go into private equity. I talked a little bit about collaborating with governors and what have you, and I've always felt a very heartfelt need to educate the West about the East. It's something that I stand for, and I started to do a lot of work around Chinese culture and engagement with China. I still believe that fundamentally the unity between the West and East, and specifically the United States and China, together they hold the future for global civility, prosperity, and survival. So
hold on. That shift where you went into private equity, how did it happen? Was it a call? Was it someone you knew?
It was a call. It was a private equity was the good solution to the issues that I was talking about. So I think with money, using money as a lubrication, as a platform, you can join interests from the East and West, and then you can prove it out beyond a concept, because when people's livelihoods are tied together, or their sense of abundance, they're tied to the same bottom line, that is going to really motivate a different kind of behavior. So my thesis was that if you could actually introduce projects and support large-scale commercial projects between the East and West, we could actually scale this kind of difference.
Were you comfortable?
Yeah, I was incredibly comfortable.
How long were you in it for?
I was in it for 4 years, and I ended up launching what is called the California Fund to implement a very significant arrangement that Governor Brown entered into with the Chinese President Xi. And Governor Brown asked me if I could help implement this strategic California-China strategic initiative across 6 industries. And And I petitioned them to add culture and entertainment, which they did. So there's 7 industrial sectors that, and I implicitly understood that a private equity fund that both sides held was going to be able to move the needle forward. And that's when I decided to go into private equity. Well, up until before then, I had been involved in running film investment funds and media investment funds, and I really understood the inner workings of how to do that.
2 questions, two very important questions. Tell me about the day of destruction. So at the end of private equity, what actually happened?
Well, Donald Trump became president.
Yeah.
I had really structured my life around these larger themes. You know, I was running a company that is a production company between Hollywood and China in both places,
Okay.
and we were focused on co-productions between the world's largest first and second entertainment industry. So that was what I was really good at.
Okay.
I was running this private equity fund that was making bi-coastal investments on both sides. I also had a movie studio in China. I had companies in Hong Kong, and when the political environment changed in the U.S. and China, all of those businesses became no longer viable because of really political differences and a different policy environment.
So what actually happened? So you had to shut it down?
I had to shut it down and reorg. I had amassed significant capital. Let's just say it was in the 10 digits of resources. We had to
shut it down.
I had to shut it down.
What was that like?
You know, it was easier than it was.
Because this is not quitting though.
It's not quitting. It was actually a very sober decision. I woke up one day and I looked at the headlines and I just kind of played the scenarios in my mind, and I said, look, I could try to hold on. There's just no path through this. There's no way through this. I had assembled all the pieces, and it was just not possible.
How long was the end? How long? A month, 2 days?
Well,
from the decision?
it was probably like a few months leading up to the decision point. But by the time it was the decision point, it was just a few phone calls. Everybody
Were you
understood.
sad at the end?
I had bigger fish to fry at that point. At that point, I also learned that my father was dying of lung cancer.
Okay.
So it was a very deep exploration.
Did it go dark again for you? At that time?
It did. When I said goodbye to my father, it was dark.
For how long?
I'm just getting out of it.
Really?
For a few years.
Okay.
Not dark inside, but it's sadness. I don't see it as dark. It's just that, you know, when you really mourn somebody,
Yeah.
you know, and I want to mourn him. I feel like he deserves to be mourned.
By choice.
By choice, yeah. So I still mourn him because I'm not trying to wish this upon my descendants. I only have one daughter, but if I'm not here one day, I want her to be happy, but I hope that my life has meant something to her, that she would actually miss me and mourn me as a way to honor my life. And so I honor my father and by mourning him.
When did Immortal Studios become the big thing for you?
I had Immortal Studios in my private equity stack. It was one of the companies that I was shepherding, and I intrinsically knew. I'm going to talk a little bit about a personal story because this is relevant. You know, I talked about my Kwai Chang Kang years when I walked the earth. So I came back from this 5-year sojourn. This is after the politics, after the entertainment. So, you know, after succeeding somewhat in Hollywood, I learned to produce my first couple of movies. I did become an entrepreneur. Unhappy. So I went to India and started the sojourn practice. 5 years later, I am in a different place. I'm in tie-dyed shirts, and I've given away all my possessions. Okay. I literally was super light. I was selling carpets for a living.
Damn.
At swap meets. So I'd become a completely different person, but I knew I had still so much left in me.
Okay.
And I was asking the universe, like, show me what, now that I've climbed to this mountaintop, I made a commitment of spiritual service.
Okay.
Forever.
Okay.
Show me, what do you want for me? What should I do? So one night I had a dream, And this dream kind of foreshadowed everything. I dreamt that I was taken to this place called the Akashic Records. For people who will study esoteric knowledge, the Akashic Records is like the repository of the world's information. So I was taken to this backyard of the Akashic Records, and I remember it looked a little bit like the Forbidden Palace in Beijing. It was kind of desolate, it wasn't heavily trafficked, and it was filled with a lot of storage bins that kind of rose to the sky, and it looked very Eastern. So
You remember it so
I remember
detail.
it very vividly. And I'm walking around not knowing why I'm here, and I stopped in front of one large, it's like a high-rise pagoda. And at that time, I all of a sudden developed the ability to jump like Neo in the Matrix. I was
Okay.
able to jump to the top of this building, and I opened it. I walked inside, and it's like this penthouse. It was hardwooden floors, super high ceiling. There was one box placed in the middle
In the penthouse.
in this penthouse.
A lavish penthouse?
No, it was sparse.
But it's a penthouse.
It was a penthouse. I mean, it was like a massive. But it was at the top, and it was a crate. There was a wooden crate. So I walked in the wooden crate. I opened it. You know what I found inside? I found my dad's books. I found my father's books inside this crate, and this light bulb went off. Up until this point, I am my own person. He didn't want me to go into politics. He didn't.
Okay.
I mean, there was a lot. He wanted a life of stability and other things. So
what did that dream do?
that dream reminded me of.
So when you woke up,
I woke up as like my life mission is deeply connected to what my father stands for.
this is before his passing.
This is before his passing. This is 20 years ago. So I had a big download. And so from that point on, I started to really think about his body of work and understanding, and then the Shaolin stuff, and a lot of things would precede that. So that implanted a seed. And that also corroborates my decision to leave politics. Things really started to make sense. And
But you left politics and you left private equity as well.
private equity kind of left me. Or look, again, I'm restarting a fund, so I don't think it's but it's not like a destination for me. Private equity is just a tactic. It's a methodology to do what I want. To fully execute my vision for Immortal, I'm going to need billions of dollars. And private equity is a way to harness. So it's almost like a skill. It's like a technology, if you will. So I'm not intrinsically interested in private equity or not. It's just it's something to do to get to where I really want to be.
All right. So my last question is, fast forward Immortal for me. Just fast forward it. Let's just say that you have a dream today.
Yes.
And fast forward, where's Immortal gonna be?
Immortal, I see as the iterator of a new global mythology and defining a new era of popular culture that's grounded in wisdom, understanding of who we are as humans, and the power of consciousness.
Based on what?
Based on, I think, this timeless message of Wuxia to awaken the heroes in every one of us, to help people awaken to this intrinsic opportunity we have inside each of our souls, and to really honor that and to support people to bring that to be with entertainment and storytelling as the driver for that.
So that's the warrior's dream.
That's the warrior's dream.